Hello again. In this video we're going to go into proportional editing a little more deeply. Now if you've been through the Chapter 3 lab, then you got your feet wet with the default setting for proportional editing when we made some adjustments to our bridge. However, proportional editing is really much more powerful than that. So I've set up a few layers with some different things on them that we can see as we go along. And I think at the end of this, you don't even really need to follow along unless you really want to. You'll be able to play around with it quite a bit on your own. But in my first layer, I've set up a plane, and I'm going to select that and switch to edit mode. And you can see I've subdivided this a whole bunch of times. So let's take a look at what proportional editing can do. If we remember, our hotkey for that is O, which will bring up our proportional editing tool set. Let's take a look at what we have. Typically it's disabled. We also have enable, projected 2D, and connected. And we will talk about what each one of these do. Now by default, it will go simply to enable. We also have a number of fall-offs, which is how it edits. By default, we will have smooth, which is the same thing we used on our bridge. Let's take a look at what some of these things can do. I'm going to go ahead and leave us in the default enabled, and I'm going to go ahead and leave us in the default smooth that we're used to. And I'm going to go ahead, make sure I'm on vertex, and just select a vertex out here somewhere. I'm going to hit G for grab, and I will use my scroll wheel. Now you could also use your page up and down keys, but scroll wheel works. I'll enlarge my area of influence a little bit, and I will hit Z to pull that straight up. And if we bring this up, we see we get a nice smooth mound, which is what we'd expect from the smooth setting. Let's select another vertex. And this time, let's select sphere. And we will just work right on up these so you can see what they do. I'll hit G for grab and Z for my axis. And you can see this time we get a much more spherical or dome-like setting. All right, moving along. I'll select another one, and we'll try root. I'll hit G for grab, Z for my axis, and we'll pull this up. This one I'll pull up a little bit so you can really see what's happening here. It's kind of like a missile tip. We do get a nice curve. However, the point that we selected remains very sharp and pulls up on its own. So, nice way to pull out a missile tip. Alright, we'll select another. This time we'll do sharp. And just as you would expect, G and Z, it pulls in an inverse curve very sharply. Couple more to go. We'll do linear, and linear will give us nice straight angles. At least as nice as we can do with some level of smoothing going on. But very particular angles, no curvature to the shape. We have constant, which you can think of as kind of like mesa. We'll hit G and Z, and within that circle they all pull up evenly. So we get this very nice, well, constant or zero fall off. Alrighty. Last but not least, we have random, which you can kind of think of as your landscape one. I'll hit G. I'm going to increase my influence a little. and Z, and we'll see how that pulls up. So very neat. This can be put to very good effect working on landscapes for single shots, or especially for games, especially with the new low poly craze that's going on right now. You can get some very nice, very quick effects that way. Alright, so that's all of the different tools in our fall-offs in our proportional editing. We also have projected and connected, but we'll get to those in a sec. I'm going to set this back to smooth, deselect everything, tab back into object mode. I'm going to select my second layer, where I have a nice cylinder. And if I tab in, you can see that I have subdivided that quite a few times. Now, what I want to demonstrate here is that our grab tool is not the only tool that we have available. I'm going to switch to ortho, and I'm going to make sure that I can access both sides. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of the middle of this. That'll do nicely. And now, with my proportional editing on, I'm going to hit scale. I'm sorry, not scale, rotate. And we can see that I've got most of my cylinder in here. I'm going to go ahead and increase it so I have all of it. Then I'm going to begin to scale. You see, we can begin to create some very interesting shapes. If we were to then go to another view, grab a few more pieces, we could really begin to get some interesting, complex geometry going on. So again, I hope seeing this little simple demonstration gives you some idea of just the sorts of things that we can do using proportional editing. Alright, we will get out of that. I'm going to hop over here. Now in this case we have a series of columns, and I'm going to go to my top view. Zoom out a little bit. And this time I will use my grab button again. And I'm going to select my center column. These are individual objects. So in this case, we're in object mode. So this demonstrates that we can also use our proportional editing in object mode as well. So if I hit grab and figure out where my circle is, oh, see, I got our proportional editing, and I managed to turn it off, which is why that didn't work. So if that happens to you, just take a look down here and see if you've got it on. So we'll hit G for grab again. This time I'm going to go up, and I'm going to grab everything but my last two. Then I'm also going to hit X for my X-axis, and I'm just going to pull all these. And I can also, in the middle of my grab, I can begin to scroll and change how this sets up. So see, we can do all sorts of interesting things here. I'll left click to finish that, and we'll give a little spin and have a look. And you can see how you could use duplicates of things to get very good arrays without having to really goof around with settings in your array modifier. You could just make a simple array, separate the objects, or simply duplicate the objects like I did with these, and then use proportional editing for your movement to get some very nice architectural effects. Alright, now we do have one more thing I want to look at. well, two more things I want to look at, but one that we already have set up. I want to go back to my first layer, and I'm going to set this kind of on the view we had, and I'm going to go back to my perspective. And now I want to talk about the 2D projection. I'm going to tab into edit mode. And I'm going to select projected 2D. Now before we actually do anything, let's talk about what's going to happen here. Basically, if you remember way back when we first started and we were talking about transform tools, and if we didn't actually choose an axis to transform on, then it would transform from the viewpoint that we're at. So if I were to move this around a little bit, and I were to hit grab, I'm going to shrink this down so we can see it a little better. Now everything that's inside that circle of influence is going to get moved because it's looking at it as a 2D picture. So it doesn't matter how far back it is or how far to the left or right it is, wherever it is within that circle is now going to get grabbed. And you can see the effect that has. And we can do some pretty neat things. Oops. And you can see how these start to flare out. So this is an awesome tool when you're working with environments, landscapes, mountains, rocky areas, things like that. You can get some very cool natural effects doing it this way. So that's how the 2D projection works. Now, let's go ahead and look at what connected does. All right, I'm going to hop over to my fourth layer. You can see I've just modeled a little thingy here, I don't know, monument, whatever you want to call it. And I will tab into edit mode. And you can see that I have these fingers, as it were, subdivided. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I am in face mode. And I'm going to grab this top face. Better yet, it'll be easier to see in this one. Let's grab this top face. And I will turn on my proportional editing. I will make sure I'm in connected. And in this case, I'm going to hit scale. I'm going to bring this down quite a bit. Now, we can see that all three of these points sticking up are within the sphere of influence. But if I scale it down at the top, the only thing affected are the parts that are directly connected to the geometry that I've selected. I could then easily go on to choose this one, scale that up, so when you have really when you have really complex pieces, and the first thing that comes to my mind is when you're working on a character, when you have fingers, toes, things like that, or in hard surface modeling, if you were working on a cityscape and you just wanted to affect one building, but it was very difficult to grab that. This is an excellent method for being able to have this encompassing sphere of influence, but only to project that onto a single piece. So we've had a look at all the different ways that we can use this. We have looked at connected, which we just did, projected, which is like a 2D picture, and the regular enable. We've looked at all of the different fall-offs and different potential uses for those. And we've covered that even though this is called proportional editing, we can make use of it when we're in object mode. So, I hope you got a lot out of this video and certainly have a much better understanding of what we can do with proportional editing and what a powerful tool it is. We've got just one more video to go in this chapter. I'll see you there.